Okay, so we also said that in the financial management is important in determining the efficient management of the drinking water system, and user charge determination is important component of the financial management. And we also said that cost-based pricing is appropriate for determining the user charges. And we also use the competitive market principles to determine the user charges. So we talked about the pricing principle. One is cost-based, the value-based, and the competitive market-based pricing. Cost-based is essentially requires that you need to assess the unit cost of production and add a suitable margin to arrive at the unit price. You can think of, let's say, a retailer buying goods from a wholesaler and add a certain percentage of margin to it while selling in the retail market. So this approach helps to ensure that the cost is covered and is appropriate where there are no competitors in the market, and the enterprise is not aiming to maximize profit. Okay, so that's the situation, where one could use the cost-based pricing. And yesterday we also said that, for drinking water delivery systems, it's more appropriate to use cost-based, approach to pricing. We can also, of course, look at the other system. This cost-based is essentially saying that, if you look at the supply curve, which is also marginal cost, you use this cost as the basis for pricing. In case of a value-based approach, so it determines the price based on the value of consumer value the consumers attach to the product or willingness to pay, how much the consumers are willing to pay, and price accordingly. So it's often used when product is unique or highly differentiated on quality, features, benefits, and desirability. And it considers the customer's ability and willingness to pay, and the prices of competing products and cost structures are also kept in mind. So you can think of something like, the bottled water. So the bottled water actually costs very little to produce, maybe 2 rupees, 3 rupees, and so on. But it's actually priced quite high because there is a demand for it. So value-based pricing you will see in many cases, many products, where the sellers basically look at what is the extent of demand that is there, and based on that, the pricing is done. So one essentially look at, trying to assess the demand somehow and use a single price or even multiple prices. Sometimes, you can see the same product in 2 different versions, regular and premium and so on. And their cost differences may not be very much, but you see if price differences could be considerable. So, of course, this is not very much useful for us in cost-based approach, but of course, we need to understand what the demand is. The third category is computation-based approach, which uses computation as the basis for pricing, which considers supply, demand, and the market structure, as we discussed yesterday. This approach is generally followed when there are several similar products competing in the marketplace, and price is the primary determinant of the purchase. So then, you meet 2 kind of products, and many products, FMCGs and others, you could see, of course, commodities and so on, you see very much in the market, where you will see computation-based pricing. So for us, most relevant is cost-based pricing. And in cost-based pricing, again, I know one can also look at how different mechanism can be used in terms of, imposing the user charges. Either one can go for a flat pricing or volumetric pricing. And which one of these would you use will be dependent on various factors such as geography, socio-demographic background, existing water resources, or it could be simply administrative ease. Sometimes, capability becomes an important factor in determining, what should be the tariff mechanism. So in case of, let's say, flat pricing approach, what we are doing is the service provider charges the same amount of tariff for a particular product or service, usually in competition with the volume-based pricing. So, it's irrespective of what the quantity is consumed, the same amount is charged. For example, fixed monthly charge per household in a piped water supply is an example of a flat pricing approach. And in many cases, you see that, generally, at the VWSC level, most pricing is done using a flat pricing approach. So while this approach is simpler to implement, it may not be a very fair system because where there are large variations in the sizes of the households, we have seen in some cases, the number of people in a household, household members could vary from 1 to 10 and so on. So if we are thinking of supplying 55 liters of water per day, so the variation is from anywhere from 55 to 550. So that's a large variation, and maybe charging same price for everybody, all these households may not be a fair system. So particularly where the water is scarce. So, there is a high value for water, and in which case, this may not be a fair pricing system. So it's important that, one actually considers moving away from flat pricing approach, though at the initial stages to make it simpler to implement and so on, one may start with a flat pricing approach. And of course, this strategy does not promote judicious use of water because irrespective of how much you use at household, you pay the same price. So therefore, it's advisable that while one may use flat pricing system, an approach, or at the initial stage, you try to move to a volumetric pricing system where you charge based on the amount of water consumed. So that is what the volumetric tariff is. So water charges are directly proportional to the water consumption. So as as you consume more, you have to pay more, and therefore the individuals and households would be careful in using excess water or may not waste water because they will have to pay for it. So, so this is an approach which could be used as you have a more developed system, as well as, of course, this will also volumetric pricing will also allow you to go for 24/7 water supply. So since it's a volumetric pricing, so even if you make it available 24/7, people will use water judiciously, and therefore it will work. So that's the method that one should try to use when you actually sort of stabilize in the Village Water and Sanitation Committee, as well as you try to sort of understand the intricacies of water supply and the costing and so on. So in volumetric pricing, there are again, three different types of pricing that you can use. One is increasing block tariff, the other one is uniform water tariff, and the other one is two-part tariff system. So we will just look at each one of them: uniform water system and increasing block tariff and two-part tariff. In case of uniform water tariff, the rate remains same. That means the per unit rate of water remains same regardless of extent of usage. So this sort of simplifies billing, so you don't have to do more computation. It's a more simpler computation to arrive at the billing, and so therefore it may be again useful as you are in an initial stage of operations. Though it may not promote conservation in the sense that, okay, we would like to make sure that the water is used more judiciously, while the individuals and families use the required amount of water, but beyond certain level, they actually they should very carefully use it. So that may not come through from this kind of uniform water tariff. So the marginal cost pricing may not come through in this. Whereas, if you look at the increasing block tariff, you can see the figure here. So for certain levels of water consumption, your tariff remains same. But as it increases and it goes beyond that level, then the price increases. So in order to disincentivize higher amount of consumption of water. So that's also important in places where there are water scarcity, so that you want to discourage people consuming large amount of water. So it incentivizes the efficient use and discourages wastage, while this helps in recovering the cost as per the marginal cost of supply. It needs accurate measurement. That's one of the drawbacks of this particular tariff system, that you need to have proper measurement. Of course, measurement is required in all volumetric tariff, but here you need to keep very accurate record, because the tariff suddenly jumps, and therefore people will complain if the record is not correct or not maintained properly. So which could be a challenging situation where the capability with the service provider is low. Let's say VWSPs are not very well versed with the measurement and recording and so on, in which case this may become a challenging situation for such VWSCs. We can also, look at two-part tariff. So it actually incorporates both fixed service charges, for infrastructure maintenance. Generally, if you give the maintenance contract, there is a fixed service charge. And there may be other fixed charges as well. For example, salary sometimes may be fixed, because, for a year you may have hired somebody, and therefore the salary may be fixed. And variable service charges could be, electricity charge and so on. These are two different components, and therefore you can have a two-part tariff. So while the fixed charge or fixed cost is fixed cost for the year is not varying according to the consumption of water, but the variable charge does vary according to the consumption of water. So therefore, you can see as a graphical illustration, this blue line is basically the fixed part of the two-part tariff, whereas there is also a variable component, which basically incorporates the variable cost with respect to the quantity of consumption. Of course, this variable can also be made as more like a stepwise kind of charging. That means beyond certain level you charge, you increase the charges and so on. But that's up to the let's say a management to decide how complex you can get to, and also what is a best way to charge, considering the recovery of the cost as well as judicious use of water. So these are different volumetric tariffs that one can actually use in managing the drinking water system. So we did talk about why we use cost-based pricing strategy. Essentially, we said that it actually maximizes welfare. You can actually say that, okay, I'm not going to charge any margin on this. I'm going to charge as a service provider. I'm going to charge only the cost. So as long as you are able to contain costs properly, then the cost-based pricing is a good strategy for pricing, and that would maximize welfare. And of course, it will also meet the cost, and that's why one can actually go for a cost-based pricing approach in the drinking water supply systems. So let's sort of illustrate the relationship between the cost and the demand. We have taken this example from one of our case studies in Odisha, in Ganjam district, a place called Kamapalli, where Gram Vikas is doing a lot of work. And we have looked at the cost component in this VWSC, in this habitation. There are 103 households in this, and the number of people are 496. So using these information as well as the fixed cost information, this particular fixed cost information is basically derived from the total investment, which is actually about 14.75 lakhs. And we looked at the annual fixed cost. We will talk in detail about how to arrive at annual fixed cost from total investment and so on. So that's how we looked at the annual fixed cost, and then annual variable cost. And again, the demand here is basically we looked at different levels of demand. Let's say if there are only 10 LPCD, and so what will be the total demand for a year, with 496 people. So that's how we have arrived at this. This is in kiloliters. Similarly, this is for 10 LPCD, this is for 20 LPCD, 30 LPCD, 40 LPCD. This is 55 LPCD because that's what our benchmark is. And this is 60 LPCD. So for these different LPCDs, what is the total demand? That means how much needs to be supplied by the VWSC. That's one important variable that we have. The other one is, as I said, fixed cost. The fixed cost remains same, irrespective of how much you are actually pumping, whether it's 10 LPCD, 20 LPCD, and so on. Then we also looked at total variable cost, and this variable cost has one component is basically the salary of the waterman, and which is more or less fixed, for a year and so on. And the other cost is actually the electricity charges. So the electricity charge, of course, can vary from one level of pumping to another level. And we looked at what is the monthly electricity charge and how much water was pumped. And we tried to come up with what is the per kiloliter cost of electricity for pumping. Then we looked at for that 1,810 kiloliters, what will be the electricity charge, and we added that to the salary component and other repair maintenance component to come up with a total variable cost. So we did that for all these different levels of supply, as we discussed here, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 55, and 60. So then, of course, with having these fixed cost and variable cost, we can come up with the total cost. So this is the total of the fixed cost and the variable cost. And this is for all these different levels of LPCDs. And then we can arrive at average variable cost. What is the cost per unit of supply of water, and when there is only 10 LPCD, 20, 30, 40, and 55 and 60. So we can see that this is what the average variable cost is. So 23.56 is the average variable cost, which is total variable cost divided by the demand. And similarly, we do it for each one of these levels. So that is what this cost is, average variable cost. Now, then we can also get the average total cost, which is actually total cost divided by the amount of water that is supplied. So that is 110 when the LPCD is 10. And 60, 43, 35, and so on. So this is the total average total cost. Again, one can also come up with a marginal cost, which is basically saying that what is the additional cost of producing one more unit of water, or supplying one more unit of water. So that is what you basically the difference between the total cost two levels and the difference in the supply. So if you divide this difference with this difference, you will get this one. So the marginal cost, you can see in this case the marginal cost is constant as 10.21. Then, of course, one can assume a price in order to get the demand curve. I'll show you that demand curve, and with that, one can also get the marginal revenue. Marginal revenue is essentially the revenue that is generated by selling one more unit of output. So given the demand and the price, you can come up with the total revenue. And from the total revenue, you can actually derive the marginal revenue. So that is how you can actually, compute these different, cost and revenue parameters. And we can look at graphically these variables. Okay, so yeah, this is what the demand is. You have price here. And these are the quantities, and this is how the demand looks like. This is the marginal revenue curve. And yesterday we did discuss about marginal revenue curve, and this is how it looks like, the relationship between the demand and the marginal revenue. We can also look at the cost curves. So this is the average total cost. You can see it is declining as as you pump more and more water because of the fixed costs that are involved. And you can also see average variable cost. That's also decreasing, but slightly. And you can see a fixed marginal cost. So these are cost relationship in this particular example. Now we put costs and the demand together. We will see this is what the demand is and this is what the cost is. And if it is intersecting at 55 liters of water per day, and that comes to about 10,000 kiloliters per annum, which is of course is around that figure, which is I think somewhere around 9,960 or so. And so therefore, if we want to recover full cost at 55 liters of LPCD supply, then it essentially says that you need to charge this price. So which is about 28 rupees or so. So that is how you can actually determine the price, in order to supply this, 55 liters of water, and what should be the price, given the, average total cost. Now, one can also look at, of course, this is the current demand. So people are ready to pay. Well, if the demand is not this, but let's say the demand is this dotted line, then what is the price that you are that you can charge so that people will pay for it? So which is again comes to about 13 rupees or so. So this covers the this since this is the average variable cost, it actually covers the average variable cost, that is basically operation and maintenance cost, can be covered by charging about 13 rupees. So given that demand is this, you need to charge 13 rupees. Whereas if the demand is more, so you could have charged about 28 rupees and so. Now one can also look at, how does that compare with the, let's say if you had given it to a monopoly or somebody to, a private agency which would, supply this water, then of course, if there are no conditions put in, that means, so they need to really supply to everybody and so on. If there are no conditions, they would have actually looked at marginal revenue and marginal cost. So marginal revenue is equals to marginal cost is basically profit maximizing condition. So private firms would always be interested in maximizing profit, and they would actually supply about 5,700 kiloliters or so instead of close to 10,000 liters, and they would charge close to about 98, 97 rupees per kiloliter instead of 30 rupees that we have come up with earlier, right? So you can see that price differences considerably in this case, where monopoly can actually make profit, and that's why it's important that we look for public agencies, local agencies, communities, to manage the water supply so that you can actually reduce the user charges, as well as of course make it available to everyone in the community. Now, see, I asked you, some of you have raised this question yesterday. There may not be enough demand, or enough demand in the sense that they may not be ready to pay for water, right? So this, may not be ready to pay for water may come from several factors, and we will, discuss that a little later. But it may be such that, something like this, this is what the demand is, demand is low compared to this demand. So then the question is, in order to make sure that you are able to recover full cost, and charge, let's say 30 rupees or so, then, you need to see how you can push this demand up, okay, towards here, so that, at least it reaches this level, or ideally it reaches this level. So that is where one has to think through what are the key barriers in terms of their willingness to pay. Is it the quality of water? Is it the quantity of water? Is it the regular supply? Or what is the prevailing conditions and so on? And is it possible to, push this demand up through education and so on? So, okay. Okay, so what are some of the ways by which, or the factors by which you can correct the low demand or improve the demand? One is, of course, change in taste and preferences. Often people think that their own well water is tasty or whatever it is. So, giving adequate information about their water. Of course, if it happens to be very good and so on, I think there is probably no need for including people in the piped water drinking system. But in other cases, one can, educate them and with, provide required information about quality of water and their health impacts and so on. Which will, help in pushing the demand up. One can also give information about how communities can manage the water to reduce water charges, maybe reduce non-revenue water, as we know, the water is also supplied to other public, places, public institutions and so on, schools, Anganwadis, and PHCs, and of course, Gram Panchayat and so on. And, are there wastages of water in these places? To what extent, one can reduce the non-revenue water, or there are pipe breakages and there are, a lot of wastage of water. So how do we decrease it in order to make sure that, the water charges will be low? So again, information about community management and how it is actually helping efficient management, grievance redressal, and so on, so that the demand can be improved to make sure that you can recover at least the operation and maintenance cost, average variable cost, if not the full cost. So when we are looking at costing, though full cost recovery helps in ensuring timely repair and maintenance, as well as replacement, as we have been saying, at the very, very least, especially in the initial stages, such projects envisage covering operation and maintenance expenses. So unit cost of service delivery is also an important metric in effective management of any system. Unit cost is always compared across regions, across markets, across countries, and so on, to see how efficient you are in terms of producing or delivering certain services. So unit cost and its components need to be computed periodically as a performance measure, as well as to help in determining the water charges or water charges. So such cost computation helps in understanding the cost structure, so that comparisons can be made across schemes and over time to understand the strengths and weaknesses, as well as help to take appropriate measures. Okay, so one can see in a particular system, the unit cost is very high. Then you can find out, is it because of the fixed cost? Is it because of the variable cost itself? Whether it is because of the salary? We have seen in some cases these government salaries are paid for supplying, let's say, water in habitations of, let's say, 60 or 70 and so on. So in which case it's not going to be very efficient. When there are 60, 70 households are there, then you can sort of proportionally pay, because the waterman is not going to work full time. And for the hours of working, one can actually pay, and one can also come up with some way of standards. Maybe anywhere from one waterman can serve anywhere from 300 to 500 households, depending on the situation, and accordingly one can actually come up with a proportional payment in order to make sure that it's a fair system for the work that is involved and compensated. So there are these different issues that one has to really look at in order to make sure that the costs that you arrive at, it could be because of the non-revenue water itself, or as we were discussing yesterday, because of the overcapitalization. So that means you spend a lot of money in the infrastructure development, which may not be needed in some cases, which there may be ways of reducing it. So those things can be done if the community is involved from the very beginning, because they will know how best to cut the cost. So therefore, it's important when we start calculating unit cost from the very beginning itself, maybe even at the planning stage or the DPR stage. So DPR stage, we do give a lot of details about the extent of cost involved, and that gives a very good input to calculate these unit costs, and then say, okay, is it reasonable or not, when you compare it across the regions. And if it is not, what is the reason for it? Sometimes you might see that, naturally there may be high cost. For example, very hilly areas, hilly terrains, and so on, and the houses are sparsely located. And in such cases, you might find that the capital cost may be high. But one should also look at, in those situations, are there ways by which you can reduce this capital cost by having smaller systems in different places, so that the cost can be reduced. So those are things that needs to be understood. The variables that can get into costing, you can now see that, of course, when we actually finish our sessions by tomorrow, we will see in greater detail the areas of cost that can be actually paid much more attention, and so that we can come up with a reasonable cost of delivering the water. So full cost computation needs to be done even if the immediate objective is to cover only operational cost through user charges, as it helps in understanding the total cost of the service delivery and plan for meeting the replacement expenses well ahead of time, so that the burden of lump sum expenses can be avoided. That means, so if there is a replacement, there is going to be huge cost. So in order to avoid that one-time huge cost, which of course government may or may not come forward to take care of it. So in order to prepare for it, if the life time of a particular system is 25 years, so you have 25 years to really prepare yourself to take care of that. So in small amounts, if you are able to collect, these money in addition to the operational cost, that can actually go into build a corpus which might help in replacement when it is needed. So we did talk about the demand for pipe drinking water. We will look at it in a little more detail. So demand for pipe water system depends on the availability of alternative sources of water, whether they already have a good water available, and they already have a pump which actually pumps water, and they get a tap water from their own system. So, and if the quality is good, so then why would they actually look for another tap water system? So, you can say that in such cases, the demand would be low. Whereas, if there are no water at all, they have to fetch water from long distances. going to a well which is located far away, and it takes time, effort, and also adds to uncertainty about availability of water, then definitely the demand for the piped water is going to be more. So we can actually put that in some framework and try to see when the demand will be high and when demand will be low. So of course you can further improve upon this particular table. So you have on one side that is water scarcity, and of course the other one is water quality. So in water scarcity, of course, there is one more parameter or the dimension, which is basically perception about quality of available water by the households. So now one can look at, as far as water scarcity is concerned, it could be available abundantly throughout the year, or there may be a seasonal scarcity, or there may be a full scarcity. So, three different, scenarios we can think of. In terms of quality of available water, could be, good quality or bad quality. And then again, so good quality, is it perceived, properly by the households? Is it perceived as good, or it is not perceived as good? And again, whether it is perceived as bad quality or not. So these are different dimensions on which one can actually look at individual situation. So therefore, if you happen, if a particular habitation is in any one of these, then we can see what will be the demand. So for example, so let's say water scarce regions. So, in water scarce region, in all conditions, we will see that, there is a high demand for tap water, okay, the piped water. So you can see all this high demand. You can also see that, let us say, if the quality available is good and it is perceived as good, and water is available, then there will be very low demand. Whereas there is a seasonal scarcity, then there will be a seasonal demand. So you supply water only, the requirement is basically supplying water only during, let's say, summer season. So whereas, if the water quality is good, but it is not perceived as good, then the demand for tap water will be much more, something like a medium demand and so on. And if there is a scarcity of water, even if it is seasonally, then we will see that it is the demand will be high for tap water. Similarly, if the quality is bad and it is perceived as bad, and the water availability, even though it is abundant, but there will be a medium demand, because at least for drinking water, cooking purpose, and so on, people may want good quality water, though they might use the other water for washing and so on. So whereas water is seasonally scarce, then you will see that there will be high demand. So whereas the water quality of water available is bad, and it is not perceived as bad, then people will still go ahead and drink water and use that water, and therefore the demand for piped water will be low. And similarly, if there is a seasonal scarcity, there will be a seasonal demand. So of course, you can always look at other scenarios and see, what is the current situation for a given habitation, given these different dimensions. So using these, we can say, we can categorize some scenarios, or some habitation is having high demand, and some are low demand, some are medium demand, and some are seasonal demand. So you can see there are 4 different types scenarios arriving from the way the people perceive water quality along with the scarcity of water. So in these cases, for example, if there is a low demand which is arising out of water scarcity, And of course, as we talked about, low demand, which is arising out of abundantly available water or adequately available water, then we would expect that this, the demand will be like this instead of a medium demand or a high demand. Sorry, I think there is. Okay. Not sure how to get rid of this. Yeah. Okay. So therefore, similarly, one can think of, high demand, low demand, as well as medium demand. For example, this is a high demand, this is a low demand, and in between, one can consider it as a medium demand. So one may actually assess this as we start a project in order to see what will be the extent of demand. If there is very low demand, I think there is no point in actually having big infrastructure there and so on. And one can see, whether if it is only a question of few households and so on. Of course, the JJM says less than 20 households. You need not worry about it. Of course, there may be other ways of making drinking water supply available. But given a habitation, one can actually assess what is the likely demand. Is it because of the perception? If the low demand is because of the perception, and so on, or they're concerned about whether the community will be able to deliver water adequately on time and quality water. So, or sometimes, it may be just because they don't understand that the quality of water they have may not be good, and it can create health problems and other issues. So we can really see what are the measures that one has to take in order to make sure that we can actually increase the demand. We also need to keep in mind the social cost and benefits. So though we may not see a huge social cost in terms of supplying drinking water, but you can understand that, as we extract water from, let's say, groundwater, then there could be a depletion of groundwater, and it can affect the others who are actually using the groundwater and so on. So though, the drinking water usage is much less compared to the agriculture usage and the industrial usage, agriculture usage is considered to be about 85% of the total water use, whereas the drinking water is only about 7%. So therefore, the social cost may not be very big issues. We need to, of course, take into account some social benefit that one can get. One is grey water management, making aware of the community about the grey water management. At least they can use it for their kitchen garden and so on. And how supplying good quality of water helps improve, general health of the public. And incorporating good practices to judicially use water are some of the points that we need to keep in mind as a benefit that actually accrues apart from supplying water to individual households. So therefore, while considering the user charges, sometimes if there are very high social benefits, maybe government and other agencies may support it in order to reduce the cost burden on the communities. So now the question is, how do we calculate cost? Maybe I think we will take it up in the next session, because we are running out of time, and I will take up questions and try to answer these questions that you may have already put it up on the chat. Prerna, can you please go ahead and read out the...
Yes, sir. So instead of questions, I think we have some more of comments. So we have a comment from Dr. Dharmendra Kumawat. The presumption of lower capital cost by community, the arrive from expertise department is higher need to be rethought. Cost resilience on community may be incorrect.
Correct. Yeah. The communities may not have all the information that is available, that's required to really build a system. That's very true. But sometimes they can suggest some very interesting things, or to reduce cost. So that's where I think there is some, a dialogue that takes place between the communities and the expertise, so that we arrive at a right kind of infrastructure and may be able to reduce the cost.
So we have one question from Subrat Barsanaya. How can we maximize the price even under community management model based on the graphs shown for perfect competition?
How can we, sorry?
How can we maximize the price even under community management model based on the graphs shown for perfect competition?
Yeah, what we essentially said is, in a perfect competitive market, supply demand actually takes care of the, pricing, determining the prices, which is welfare maximizing. Now, so if you extrapolate that to drinking water system, so essentially it says that what is the demand from the community in the extent of demand that is there and their willingness to pay with full information about the water and so on. That means, the water quality, the adequacy, as well as the regularity in supply. With that, what is the demand that is there, and what are the average costs? Now, so the best pricing situation is one where average costs actually intersect the demand. So, in a situation where the marginal costs are either decreasing or they are constant, as we have seen in this particular case. Otherwise, of course, it's always the marginal cost, intersecting the demand point is the best pricing situation for, water supply. So here we are basically looking at, let's say if there is a constant marginal cost, which is, quite low, as well, or decreasing marginal cost, we go by the average cost. So can we cover the average total cost or average variable cost? So that's where, intersection of the demand with the average cost will give us appropriate, price to be charged to the individual households. Renaya.
Yes, sir. We have one comment from Dr. Dharmendra Kumawat. IBT has been very successful deployment in urban water utilities, but rural supplies in Rajasthan were mostly flat. But nowadays, political issues on the water tariff makes tougher going. Public also prefer equitable solution. So the concept of taking village as market boundary is quite difficult.
Yeah, of course, there are these other issues that comes into more like externalities coming from outside, the political pronunciation and so on, and which makes it a little difficult to really establish and manage a good, efficient, drinking water supply system. But I think one thing is, wherever water is scarce and adequate, information, if one should, if you give enough information, then I think there is a possibility of, people willing to pay, and you can probably run the system through the, community participation. Of course, it's a tougher task, but I see that while it requires quite a bit of effort, it is still possible.
Yes, sir. We have another comment from Manoj Kumar. To encourage VWSCs or GP for good O&M, some awards and rewards at different levels should be implemented.
Yeah, I think that's very true. I think establishing model villages, where they are efficiently managing the system, both in terms of operations and financial and so on, would be sort of a good demonstrative effect on other villages as well. So that's that one can have a system where they are honored, and and some kind of a competition and so on would be very, very useful to convey that it's possible to manage the system by the community, as well as one can actually run it with a reasonably low cost.
Yes, sir. We have one question from Mr. Nirmal Chittora. As VWSC to decide the tariff, so some simple mechanism needed for them. Please suggest a simple method for them.
Yeah, this particular program is for senior people. In fact, many of the registered participants are senior people, and all of you come with quite a bit of experience and so on. So that's why we try to bring in the conceptual understanding also, because we would expect that the program participants will also explain it to many others and train others and so on. So that's why we brought in certain conceptual understanding. But we are also trying to make it simpler by having a, let's say, an Excel sheet with computations, with the formulas and so on, so that they need to put in only few information in the Excel sheet in order to get the right pricing and so on. So that is, we will show it to you in the next class. That's tomorrow's class. Yes, we did think about it, and we do have these particular solutions available.
Yes, I think that is most of it. Most of them are basically thanking you for your presentation and the fact that it is very informative in nature. They're looking forward. And I think we have one more comment just now from Dr. Upendra Singh. While deciding the price of water based on the investments, do we feel importance of participation of representative from rural villages?
Yeah, I think it's very important. I think it's important that they understand the investment to be made and why it is costing, let's say, any X amount and so on. So that once they understand, they are also ready to participate. They are ready to, as we have discussed yesterday, they are also ready to contribute. They are ready to, supervise a little bit, if not, in great detail, but at least to some extent they can do, as well as they will be then ready to take over the operations and manage, maintenance. So in order to do that, it's important that we share as much information as possible with the community in the very beginning itself, so that they know their responsibility, and then they are prepared to participate in the in the system management.
There is a follow-up question
Yeah.
from Dr. Upendra Singh. But in a system, how it can be institutionalized?
Yeah, of course, there is an IEC system that has been established, suggested by GGM and established by state government and so on. But I think what is happening is there has the whatever is said in the JJM guidelines, for example, the village action plan has to be prepared with the participation of the villagers community. The approval of the DPR should be done by the Gram Panchayat and so on. Some of these things are not happening. And if these things are actually happening, then we would see that there is a lot more information sharing that happens with the community, at the initial stage itself. And it avoids many problems that are there later on. We went to some villages and then we were asking, households, and they were saying, we don't know, when they are going to work and when they are going to complete it. We don't have any information about it, how it is going to be run and so on. And we don't know who the contractor is. They are actually doing these jobs which are not proper. They put these low quality pipes in the taps and so on. But they seem to be sort of helpless. So this may be, of course, a particular case and so on, but though our field work suggests that it is there in quite a few places. But I think these are things, which can be actually resolved if we actually take sequential steps. That means first is basically, preparing the community to take over, to adequately create awareness among people. Then they are sort of ready to, of course, it's not going to happen overnight. In fact, we were studying the Gram Vikas model in Odisha. They said that, often it took 6 months for them to convince the community that they should take the ownership of these systems. So there, it's going to be time consuming, but it is worth doing it, rather than later on, having problems. It's worth doing in the very beginning itself. Sequential steps like community awareness is the most important one. Participation in the village action plan, the DPR approval, and so on, so that they know, what exactly this is and what their responsibility is going forward.
Yes, sir. We have another question. How to bring a sense of ownership among the community in the post-implementation phase? In terms of Assam context, I am asking.
Yeah, I think in all cases, what is important is the villagers or the community is involved from the beginning itself. That's what I was trying to say. These sequential steps are very, very important. That is, the first step is always creating awareness among the villagers, communities, before we start any digging exercises or start implementing or construction and so on. We need to first make them aware. Then we need to have a action, village action plan together, DPR approval and so on. So they should be, they should know what it is, what the responsibilities are at the village action plan itself, at that level. Then there will not be much of a problem once we finish up the infrastructure and so on. But if we are not making aware of these things at the beginning, later on they will say, okay, we didn't know that this is, we were supposed to, manage this system. So then the problem comes in. So if we follow sequentially, that's what I was trying to give you an example of this, Odisha model for Gram Vikas and so on. Though it may take a little more time at the beginning, it makes it easier, once it is completed. But otherwise, you will have, the infrastructure completed, but villages are not ready to take it up. So then, there are these, conflicts that arise between, communities and the departments and so on.
Yes, sir. We have another comment from Nanak Sant Dasani from UNICEF Rajasthan. He is saying that he agrees community processes are missed. This needs to be emphasized as VWSCs are totally ignored in spite of the JJM asking for it. He is also saying that in WASMO, it was 6 months community mobilization phase,
Correct,
which
correct.
has helped achieving results in Gujarat.
That's right. That's right. I agree with you totally. Yeah.
Yes, sir. And we have another comment from Manoj Kumar. They should be involved and engaged throughout and importance of access to safe, assured, and reliable water.
Yes, that's very,
And
very
help.
true. I think these are very, very important points that all of us have to keep in mind, so that the work goes on smoothly, and there will be an easy handover of operation and maintenance to the communities.
Yes, sir. We have another comment from Rajiv Rana. Nicely covered. Community-led tariff collection process should be elaborated.
Yeah, we will do that. We will do that. In tomorrow's session, we will do.
Yes, sir. I think that is it.
Okay, so thank you. Thanks for attending this session, and we will discuss the cost computation in tomorrow's sessions. Thank you.